Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed. This book, approximately 400,000 words in its Chinese translation, explores the relationship between human societies and their environment. Which great civilizations collapsed due to environmental destruction? Which civilizations managed to recover from the brink of collapse by treating their environment well? What lessons can these historical stories teach us today as environmental problems become increasingly severe? This is the final installment of Diamond's historical trilogy, following The Third Chimpanzee and Guns, Germs, and Steel. In this book, Jared Diamond, an American cross-disciplinary historian with a background in biology, investigates a crucial question. Why do some human societies succeed and continue to flourish while others fail and vanish without a trace? Diamond approaches this question primarily from an environmental perspective. All human societies need to exploit natural resources to survive and develop. However, in many cases, the conflict between environmental protection and economic development becomes extremely acute, almost irreconcilable. Historically, some societies self-destructed by depleting their natural resources through overexploitation or inability to cope with environmental degradation. Others achieved sustainable development and long-term prosperity through various means, including outsourcing their environmental problems to other regions. Today, environmentally friendly economic models focused on sustainable development have become mainstream. But how exactly should this be achieved? In this book, Diamond takes us on a journey through history to find answers, examining which societies established sustainable, environmentally friendly economies, and which ones achieved great revivals after environmental destruction. These stories of environment and societal rise and fall are both tragic and hopeful, offering crucial insights for both present and future. The author takes us to Montana in the northwestern United States. This scenic, sparsely populated state has recently attracted many Americans tired of fast-paced metropolitan life, similar to how Beijing residents might buy houses in Dali or Sanya. However, Diamond's research reveals that Montana's natural landscape isn't purely natural. The ecosystem has collapsed several times over the past few centuries. Initially, Montana was completely forested, home to Native American hunters. European colonists arrived, establishing fur and timber trades, gradually reducing the forests. The colonists built dams and irrigation channels to develop agriculture and animal husbandry, but Montana's cold climate and poor soil weren't suitable for most crops, and livestock productivity was unreliable. Then copper was discovered in Montana. Miners flooded in, digging mines and building railways and roads. The remaining forests became grasslands and snowfields, while water sources and soil were contaminated by mine tailings. Traditional industries like fishing disappeared, biodiversity declined dramatically, and even apple trees died. After the copper mines were exhausted, the miners left behind vast wastelands. This cheap land attracted the tourism industry. Business people began building ski resorts, racetracks, and golf courses, offering attractive prices to holidaymakers. As tourists flocked in, infrastructure followed: airports, highways, hotels, shopping centers, supermarkets, restaurants, and hospitals. Driven by profit, developers imported trees and seeds from around the world, and Montana soon featured lush forests and gardens. However, every forest, grassland, snow-capped mountain, and river had been artificially crafted. After reviewing Montana's environmental history, Diamond fell into deep contemplation. Purely natural landscapes untouched by human activity have become extremely rare on Earth, and even when they exist, tourists don't particularly appreciate them. What tourists truly enjoy are the pseudo-natural landscapes carefully designed by governments and businesses. Walking in a community garden in San Francisco is essentially no different. More importantly, Montana's natural resources are far from sufficient to support a robust physical economy. Tourism is now its pillar industry, with most Montanans earning their living from visitors who primarily come from coastal metropolitan areas. In essence, it's the big cities that sustain Montana. Why do urbanites choose Montana as their travel destination? As mentioned earlier, the state's history of timber harvesting and copper mining, coupled with early railway and highway connections, meant many Americans frequently passed through Montana. This essentially provided free tourism advertising in the world's largest cities, attracting developers and tourists alike. If Montana were located in a developing country with poor transportation, it would struggle to attract visitors and likely remain impoverished. Montana's example shows that these seemingly pristine and beautiful tourist destinations are actually parasites living off seemingly crowded and dirty metropolitan areas. These regions heavily depend on tertiary industries like tourism and, free from industrial pollution, can maintain environmentally friendly economic models. However, if anything were to happen to the big cities, these economic models would collapse instantly, making them unsuitable for global adoption. As a tourist destination, Easter Island is even more famous than Montana. On this most remote island on Earth, mysterious giant statues stand scattered across the landscape, collectively gazing at the stars as if exploring the deepest secrets of the universe. Diamond, an expert in Pacific Island cultures, has visited Easter Island multiple times for in-depth research. There are no more secrets here, only endless regret. European ships discovered the island on Easter Sunday in 1722, hence its name. The island was barren then, mostly sand without a single large tree. Thousands of natives lived in scattered villages, surviving on sweet potatoes, taro, yams, and rat hunting. They had a few canoes, but all were leaking and beyond repair, making long-distance travel impossible. It's hard to believe these primitive natives could carve and transport the island's massive statues, some weighing hundreds of tons. No wonder some people claim these statues were created by ancient aliens, doubting that these natives could have sailed to Easter Island themselves. However, the natives could speak, and underground artifacts could testify. Substantial evidence shows that the ancestors of the natives sailed from Polynesia to Easter Island around 800 CE. Back then, Easter Island was densely forested, particularly with one of Earth's tallest palm species. The surrounding waters teemed with fish, and countless seabirds inhabited the island. It was likely these seabirds that attracted the Polynesians to the island. Thanks to abundant natural resources, the Polynesian population quickly grew to thousands. They used palm trees to build canoes and bridges, engaged in deep-sea fishing, and carved and transported massive statues to demonstrate their technological and economic prowess, bringing glory to their ancestors. Unfortunately, this prosperity didn't last. Due to natural factors like low rainfall, low elevation, and rat infestation, Easter Island's forests couldn't recover once cut down. Around 1500, the last palm tree fell, turning Easter Island into a treeless island. Without trees, islanders couldn't build canoes or bridges, couldn't fish in distant waters, and fell into an economic downward spiral. The seabirds were quickly hunted to extinction, and nearby fish and shellfish were depleted. Later, driven by hunger, the natives began to turn on each other, even digging up graves to eat the dead. In the following 200 years, Easter Island's population decreased by more than 90%. Had Europeans arrived 100 years later, they likely would have found an uninhabited island. The Easter Island disaster was not an isolated case. On many Polynesian islands, including Henderson and Pitcairn Islands, once populous communities depleted their natural resources and became extinct before Europeans arrived. Mangaia Island faced a similar fate to Easter Island, with its indigenous population near extinction when Europeans discovered it. There were less tragic examples. Also in Polynesia, the inhabitants of Tikopia Island learned to live in harmony with their natural resources. After suffering from environmental degradation, they made the decisive choice to slaughter all pigs, which were destroying the environment. They developed various birth control methods and strictly limited their population to 1,200. During natural disasters like hurricanes, excess population would be subtly encouraged to commit suicide or set sail. Any innovation was discouraged as experimentation would consume natural resources. While this made their society sustainable, it also meant zero development. On larger islands like New Guinea and New Zealand, the relative abundance of natural resources meant they could achieve sustainability without such strict population controls. However, these island societies also showed little development. If you think such situations only occurred on resource-limited islands, you'd be mistaken. In the rainforests of Central America, massive pyramids hide among the vegetation, the famous remains of the Maya civilization. These were clearly once densely populated cities, but the Maya civilization declined before European arrival. While small island societies often collapsed due to scarce resources, why did the Maya civilization, situated on a continent and having flourished for over 1,000 years, still face collapse? The Maya civilization was located in Central America with a humid climate, but the karst landscape meant rainwater easily seeped underground through limestone cracks, resulting in no major rivers or lakes for water storage. Around 400 BCE, the Maya began developing agricultural civilization along several rivers. Rapid population growth and high land demand led to excessive deforestation, causing severe soil erosion that limited agricultural development. Corn was their main food source, but early corn yields were low. The humid climate meant corn could only be stored for a year, and drought would strike if rain didn't fall for several months. Additionally, the Maya had no domesticated livestock, except dogs, and hadn't invented the wheel, making it difficult to travel far from home or engage in extended warfare. Consequently, the Maya region never unified into an empire, remaining a collection of city-states with minimal food reserves. Most Maya city-states couldn't maintain prosperity for more than 200 years, creating a strong sense of fatalism among the people. The Maya attempted to prevent disasters by building reservoirs and digging deep wells to utilize Central America's abundant rain and groundwater for agriculture. Despite these efforts, their economic foundation remained fragile. Worse still, they were severely overpopulated. By the 8th century CE, the Maya population approached 20 million, making it the most densely populated region on Earth at the time. As a series of droughts struck, Maya city-states collapsed one after another. Frequent wars broke out, and eventually both victors and vanquished perished from starvation. Around 1450 CE, the last Maya city-states fell. The few Maya who survived the drought abandoned their agricultural civilization, reverting to a hunter-gatherer society, allowing the rainforest to reclaim the ruins of their ancient cities. Decades later, when Spanish colonizers landed, they witnessed a scene similar to what would later be found on Easter Island, perhaps even more tragic. All ancient cities lay abandoned, and the Maya population had dwindled to less than 300,000, indicating a 99% reduction in their population over 600 years. The decline of the Maya civilization wasn't unique. Similar cases were even more common in Asia. The tropical rainforests of Southeast Asia hide massive cities and religious complexes like Angkor Wat and Borobudur, while the deserts of West and Central Asia conceal famous ancient cities like Babylon, Petra, and Bamiyan. In the American Southwest, where Diamond resided, the Anasazi Indians built enormous cities in the 11th century, only to see them become ruins a century later due to environmental overexploitation and severe desertification. These tourist and archaeological sites, abandoned due to environmental collapse, warn us about the importance and difficulty of establishing sustainable, environmentally friendly economic models. Human societies have repeatedly failed to achieve sustainable development in tropical regions, with even dimmer prospects in the cold polar regions. In the 9th century, driven by population pressure in their cold homeland, Viking raiders from northern Europe plundered almost all of Europe. Seeking food, timber, fur, and walrus ivory, some Vikings turned westward, venturing into the North Atlantic for fishing. In 870 CE, they discovered Iceland. Archaeologists found that when the Vikings first landed, Iceland, now characterized by snow-capped mountains and grasslands, was covered in forests. The Vikings immediately began extensive logging and burning to convert Iceland into farmland and pastures. Unlike continental Europe, Iceland's soil consisted mainly of volcanic ash, thin and loose, easily eroded by strong sea winds. The Vikings' practice of stripping turf for roofing further deteriorated Iceland's natural environment. Fortunately, several wise chieftains later enacted laws prohibiting the cutting of remaining forests and sent excess population to develop other islands, narrowly averting an ecological catastrophe. Some of these displaced people discovered Greenland. As its Viking name suggests, the island was covered in lush forests when they first arrived. Compared to Iceland, Greenland had a colder climate and drier soil. The Vikings' deforestation quickly led to soil erosion and desertification. Worse still, unlike the previously uninhabited Iceland, Greenland was home to indigenous Eskimos who were well adapted to polar life. The extreme cold made it impossible for Vikings to wear their metal armor in Greenland. The armor would stick to their bodies, tearing off skin when removed, and they couldn't ride horses effectively as the animals struggled on ice, significantly reducing their military advantage. The Vikings' arrogant attitude and refusal to befriend the Inuit people led to minimal cultural exchange, making their survival even more difficult. Some Vikings were forced to sail westward, discovering Newfoundland and Labrador, becoming the first Europeans to reach America 500 years before Columbus. The climate there was mild, with seemingly endless forest and fishing resources. However, the native Indians were skilled hunters and numerous. Like in Greenland, the Vikings' aggressive attitude quickly led to attacks from Indian tribes. Since the Vikings didn't carry deadly diseases like smallpox that could affect the Indians, and were vastly outnumbered and exhausted from their long journey, they only managed to stay in Newfoundland for about a decade before being driven out by the Indians, forcing them to retreat to Greenland. Their fate in Greenland wasn't any better. Fearing food poisoning, the Greenland Vikings developed an aversion to seafood, leading them into a desperate situation. The Inuit took advantage of their weakness, repeatedly raiding Viking settlements. Around 1430 AD, the Vikings in Greenland perished, and the Inuit once again became the masters of Earth's largest island. The Vikings' devastating failures in Newfoundland and Greenland greatly increased environmental awareness among Icelandic Vikings. Eventually, Icelanders not only stopped deforestation but also abandoned most farms and pastures, focusing instead on fishing and modern technology, leading to Iceland's miraculous economic growth in the late 20th century. Hispaniola, the first major American island discovered by Columbus in the Caribbean, was initially named Little Spain. Unlike Iceland, Newfoundland, and Greenland, Hispaniola had a warm, humid climate, abundant resources, and was perfect for growing sugarcane and coffee, making it highly attractive to Spanish colonists. The indigenous Indians were wiped out early by smallpox brought by colonists. Later, France took control of the island from Spain and imported numerous African slaves to develop sugarcane plantations. In 1804, these slaves revolted, defeating Napoleon's forces sent to suppress them, and declared independence as Haiti. Though initially prosperous, Haiti's success was short-lived. Due to internal conflicts and European blockades, Haiti's economy collapsed, and the eastern part of the island became independent as the Dominican Republic. Both nations endured brutal dictatorships and frequent conflicts, with citizens exploiting natural resources recklessly. The forests were destroyed, soil eroded severely, and population grew excessively, turning the area into a massive slum. In 1966, the new Dominican government built hydroelectric plants, imported timber and natural gas, and forcibly closed all logging operations. They dismantled roads to reconnect fragmented forests, established 74 parks and nature reserves, increasing forest coverage to 28%. Meanwhile, Haiti's forest coverage remained at a mere 1% and continued declining. Today, Haiti, once relatively wealthy, exports only sugar and coffee and is the world's poorest nation. The Dominican Republic has developed a diversified economy, exporting fruits and flowers alongside sugar and coffee. The Dominican Republic has established itself in the international telecommunications sector with a GDP per capita 6 times that of Haiti. The country boasts beautiful landscapes that even attract American tourists, and over 1 million Haitians work there year-round. The author points out that Iceland and the Dominican Republic have developed relatively successful, environmentally friendly economic models, largely by learning from the failures of their neighbors, Newfoundland, Greenland, and Haiti. There aren't many economies more successful than Iceland and the Dominican Republic globally, with China and Japan being the most notable examples. Historical records show that the Chinese have been intensively developing their natural environment since ancient times. In some regions, such as the Yangtze River Delta and the middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, environmental changes due to human activity have been among the most dramatic in the world. Sometimes this development led to catastrophic consequences, such as the silting and course changes of the Yellow River and large-scale desertification in North China. At other times, the Chinese found a better balance between development and conservation, actively managing nature as exemplified by the Suzhou Gardens in the Yangtze River Delta. As a result, while Chinese dynasties changed frequently and the economic and population centers shifted southeast, the broader social framework remained intact, maintaining cultural continuity while advancing in technology and culture. After the 19th century, with new warfare and industrial development, China's natural environment deteriorated almost continuously. By the late 20th century, forest coverage had dropped to 16%, grasslands and wetlands severely degraded, wildlife largely disappeared, and bare mining areas became common. China's soil erosion reached world record levels. The Yellow River frequently ran dry, and the Yangtze River had the highest sediment content globally. However, in recent years, the Chinese government has shifted its approach, promoting environmental awareness through policy and public opinion, addressing many legacy environmental issues. Japan's environmental and economic conditions surpass China's, with 74% forest coverage and, apart from occasional earthquakes and tsunamis, few serious natural disasters, while maintaining a highly developed economy. The author discovered that, like Montana, Japan's environment wasn't always this way. During the Warring States period, Japanese warlords extensively deforested Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu islands for warfare, while also mining Japan's largest silver mine, Iwami Ginsen. Environmental collapse triggered economic crisis, forcing many Japanese to seek opportunities overseas, forming the Wokou pirates who raided China, Korea, and Southeast Asia for over a century. When Toyotomi Hideyoshi unified Japan, there wasn't enough timber to build palaces and large warships, leading to the Japanese Navy's defeat by Chinese and Korean forces. The Tokugawa shogunate, learning from history, strictly protected mountains, implemented large-scale reforestation, and adopted isolation policies. They stopped exporting silver, encouraged fishing and intensive farming, and the Wokou disappeared. These measures greatly improved Japan's ecology. Most of Japan's current forests, including the ubiquitous cherry trees, were planted during the Tokugawa period. With this strong environmental foundation, Japan's natural environment didn't severely deteriorate during modern economic development. While ancient China had environmental protection laws and customs, frequent warfare prevented their long-term implementation. Japan's environment improved significantly during the Tokugawa period, but at the cost of economic, cultural, and technological stagnation. When Japan needed to develop economically without environmental damage, it turned to military aggression, first against the Ainu people of Hokkaido, then Korea. Like China, Southeast Asian countries, Easter Island, Haiti, and other island societies, Japan faces a similar dilemma. Rapid economic development leads to environmental collapse, while environmental recovery requires halting development. After World War II, Japan discovered another sustainable, environmentally friendly economic model, establishing large-scale multinational corporations with factories in other countries. In other words, they externalized their environmental issues. However, this environmental transfer doesn't necessarily mean harming neighbors or sacrificing others. Diamond extensively discusses his collaboration with multinational corporations. Contrary to popular belief, some energy companies, like Chevron's Kutabu field in Papua New Guinea, have become the country's best ecological areas with abundant wildlife. Chevron realized that environmental protection improves relationships with local governments and communities while increasing productivity and attracting talent. Some coal mines invest heavily in repairing environmental damage from mining operations. However, many mining companies, due to thin profit margins or short-sighted management, try to circumvent environmental regulations and become major polluters. Similarly, advanced, systematic logging doesn't destroy entire forests and can even benefit forest ecosystems, while reckless logging inevitably leads to environmental disasters. These examples show that environmental destruction by businesses isn't inherent to the industry, but stems from management's environmental awareness and financial situation. Business leaders must consider: do they want to build a century-old company with a good reputation, or make quick profits and disappear? Choosing the former naturally leads to environmental protection. Choosing the latter means no amount of government or NGO punishment can prevent environmental damage. Finally, Diamond summarizes 12 major environmental problems in the modern world and expresses cautious optimism about Earth's environmental future. He clearly states that not all environmental problems can be blamed on technological progress, as environmental issues existed even in the Stone Age. Similarly, technology alone can't solve environmental problems. The core issue is political attention. Historical experience shows that if governments prioritize environmental issues, solutions are possible. This is the lesson learned from these historical stories of societal rise and fall. Diamond's historical trilogy themes. The Third Chimpanzee explains how humans emerged from genetically similar primates. The struggle between humans and other species. Guns, Germs, and Steel examines competition between different human societies and why some succeeded while others failed. The struggle between humans. Collapse shows what we should learn from collapsed societies and how to balance environment and development. Humanity's internal struggle with itself.